Recently, I rewatched Megamind and noticed a scene that seemed familiar. You might assume I'm talking about how Megamind's story is inspired by Superman's origin. We see a doomed planet and desperate scientists launching their last hope, but I'm actually referring to this specific being. There, did you see it? In this scene, we see how Megamind's parents seem to be telling him about the great destiny they have planned for him. However, their son didn't get to hear the whole message. Does it remind you of any recent movie? It reminded me a lot of the new Superman movie where Clark values the message his parents left him. Part of it was damaged during the journey, so he can't hear everything. This detail gives both movies several elements in common. Both feature a character convinced he has a destiny inherited from the heavens. But Megamind and Superman aren't sure what the purpose is, since neither heard the full message. Megamind chooses to be a villain because he feels it's what he's best at, while Superman helps people partly to fulfill his Kryptonian parents' expectations. This is a key part of both characters' journeys, as Megamind and Superman must find their own paths beyond their parents' expectations. Something everyone has to learn at some point in life. But this is just the start, as Megamind is packed with groundbreaking messages later seen in other superhero movies and series like Joker, The Boys, and Spider-Verse. What forward-thinking messages did Megamind present? Here I'll tell you. Welcome to Geek Beats, small doses of vitamin geek culture for the mind. Today we'll talk about how Megamind managed to win. Just like Megamind was ahead of James Gunn's Superman movie by almost 15 years, there are many other superhero productions with very interesting themes that Megamind tackled first. First, I bet you never considered this. Remember that scene in The Boys Season 1 where Homelander intimidates a systems worker just by being there?
I'm Homelander and I can do whatever the hell I want.
Or consider the scene where he grabs the Deep's shoulders and it feels like he could break him. These 2019 scenes were ones I loved when I first saw them. They make us consider how daunting it is to confront an evil figure with Superman's powers. But then I realized I'd felt this before. And that's because before Homelander, before Zack Snyder's Nightmare version, before we could see Omni-Man in a series or Brightburn in action. Before the Injustice video game, there was Titan from Megamind. Remember how threatening he seemed? I felt that same sensation during his first battle with Megamind. At first, he treats it like a game, believing he's facing someone like Metro Man, powerful but restrained. However, the situation shifts. When Megamind loses and expects jail, Titan refuses to stop, planning to fight to the end, revealing true terror in Megamind's eyes. While he's escaping, it's worth noting that the comics had already shown many evil Supermen. Interestingly, Titan was a key predecessor of the evil Superman trend, which recurred in movies and television over the next 15 years. In fact, the character of Titan Hal Stewart not only told us ahead of time about this whole trend of evil Supermen, but also spoke to us about another much more real problem, Hal Stewart. In the movie, Megamind depicted an incel before the term became widely used. I mean, look at him. He's lonely and in love with a woman who clearly doesn't want a romantic relationship with him. Initially, he seems friendly, but gradually it's clear Hal doesn't want to be friends with Roxanne. He has an unhealthy obsession with her and makes her proposals that are clearly not well received.
I already hired a wedding photographer in case something unexpected happens and we want to keep the photo as a memory.
Here we realize that there are many Hals in the real world, since nowadays there's talk of an epidemic of male loneliness. Incels are men unable to form emotional or sexual relationships, often blaming the world or women for their loneliness. This is exactly what we see with HAL. He thinks Roxanne ignores him only because he lacks Metro Man's power or looks. So when he gets his powers, he thinks Roxanne will fall at his feet. Which doesn't happen because behind the powers, he's still the same troubled guy who overwhelms her with too many unwanted details and now even endangers her just so he can save her later. And when Roxanne rejects him, Hal's worldview shatters because before he could think that Roxanne didn't want him because he wasn't attractive or didn't have power. But now he's aware of a harsher truth. Roxanne just isn't interested in someone like Hal. We can also find this kind of discourse in the character of Arthur Fleck, someone who feels rejected, alone, and is unable, at least at first, to have an emotional relationship with anyone. He even imagines a romance with his neighbor who hardly speaks to him. Unlike the comic book Joker, this one didn't fall into chemicals. He exploded when thrown into a society that mistreats him and doesn't give him opportunities or medication to improve. This incel perspective was brought back in the second part, since we see Arthur being manipulated by Lee throughout the entire film. because what he wants most is access to affection he never had. I think this is another point the Megamind movie handles well. It carefully develops its villains. Because the movie does an excellent job of presenting, for example, Hal's motivations with just a couple of scenes, since you, as the viewer, are able to understand his frustration and resentment toward the world. The same happens with Megamind, as he's portrayed as misunderstood, not evil in this movie. Raised in an environment that pushed him toward villainy since childhood, yet you never see him as a complete villain. He conquered the city but had no idea what to do with it, since he never expected to get that far. This shows his real goal wasn't power, but having purpose, defeating Metro Man. Once he accomplishes this, he feels empty. This kind of deeper villain development is something we've seen before in other superhero movies for a long time. For example, Tim Burton's Oswald Cobblepot comes to mind, who strongly craves acceptance. As a viewer, you get his perspective, which many other productions don't offer. Many superhero stories feature villains with generic motives like seeking power or money without deeply exploring their characters, which was common in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for a long time. Fortunately, the franchise now features great villains like Thanos with his own philosophy and characters such as Loki and Wanda who blur the usual line between heroes and villains. Watching Megamind again, I noticed an interesting element that also appears in Across the Spider-Verse. What connects Megamind and Miles Morales? The answer might surprise you. We often think Spider-Man's story shows that anyone can become a hero, gaining powers and responsibility by chance. We believed anyone could be Spider-Man, but this faded as Marvel introduced multiple universes. It was almost always Peter Parker, or a version of him, who became Spider-Man, making it feel more like the story of a chosen Peter Parker. It's a twist of fate, but this is where Megamind and Miles Morales come in. In Across the Spider-Verse, they mention that Miles Morales is an anomaly within his universe, and that he was never supposed to get powers since the spider that bit him didn't even belong to his world. So he became Spider-Man and learned in his own way that great power brings great responsibility. Though fate was against him, I felt it was the most Spider-Man thing that could happen to him. We'd already seen something like this in Megamind, where from the start he makes it clear he's fate's favorite. He grew up in a correctional facility, was discriminated against throughout his childhood, and lived with the idea that his role in life was to be a villain. Until true evil appeared, so Megamind had to fight against what fate had prepared for him and face Titan. Not with the saying, with great power comes great responsibility, but with another one I also like.
Every yang has a yin. Good always rises against evil.
But guess what? Megamind hasn't finished getting ahead of superhero stories. And as you can see, Megamind not only takes characteristics from Superman because of his origin, but also from characters like Lex Luthor and Brainiac, whom we'll soon see in 2027. In Man of Tomorrow, online sources say Superman and Lex Luthor join forces against Brainiac. I think Man of Tomorrow won't just refer to Superman, but we'll find out in the movie. How does Lex move past his hatred to see he could also be a hero, the real Man of Tomorrow? If confirmed, it'll be another reason to say Megamind did it first. Not bad for a film that was never ever given the chance to have a sequel, because it doesn't exist, there is no sequel. Do you know another point where Megamind was ahead of superhero productions? Leave it in the comments so I can make another video.
It's a day that you and Metrixida will never forget. Subscribe to the channel. I'm shaking in my custom baby seal boots.